Hey everyone, I just want to pop on here for Lauren's Sunday Live, trying to keep this consistent schedule, but I wanted to talk a little bit about food because it has been in my radar all weekend, and it highly correlates to how the brain develops, which means controls and has an impact on our behavior and then also our learning. So let's see where to start. There's so many things to talk about. Things to consider for both yourself and for kids. You want things that are grounding to the body, neutralizing to the nervous system, so foods that are sustainable, sustain the body. Healthy fats, so real true coconut oil, real true olive oil, pure olive oil. You want avocado, all those healthy fats. And the reason being because they coat your cells and they help your cells, your brain cells, fire and wire better together. So that means kids are going to retain information better because their cells are firing better. Also things like leafy greens help your brain cells to grow and create new brain cells, and then also poultry or just healthy lean meats. And if you're not a meat eater, then maybe consider some other types of healthy protein like beans or nuts for your kiddos. Beyond that, I would say really think about and consider foods that cause inflammation, because if we're stressed or anxious a lot, our body is under pressure and stress and releasing stress chemicals into the body, therefore releasing more acid into the body. So your acid levels are typically higher if you are in a stressed out period for a longer period of time. So that makes sense. If you are stressed out for a long period of time, you might develop something like a stomach ulcer, or you might realize that you have more ulcers around your mouth, and that's because more acid is in your body. So this is a crazy story that I can relate to is I had a lot of childhood stress, and then a lot of stress in life too, with multiple jobs and all these things before I learned how to ground myself and eat the right things and reduce stress naturally. So the dentist had shared that my gums are receding because I have too much acid in my diet, and I don't eat that much acid. And then my nutritionist also shared that I have way too high of acidity levels. So again, I'm very cautious of what I eat and don't eat a lot of acid. So I think it would make sense that the acid is coming from the chronic periods of stress and all of the release of the chemicals in my body. So how do we neutralize that or reduce the acid in the body? Definitely by reducing the amount of acid intake you have from foods, but there are other inflammatory foods like gluten. So can you maybe not take gluten out of the diet completely, but can you reduce gluten and trade it for something else? Dairy is also highly inflammatory, so can you take out dairy and again replace it for something else? For kids, I know almond milk can kind of be tough because it doesn't taste quite like milk and it's not always super tasty, but coconut milk could be an alternative, or oat milk has been something that a lot of kids I have worked with really loved. So there are a couple dairy alternatives. Also for cheese, I just learned this weekend. I had cut out cheese completely because I am not doing dairy, but I've learned that the enzymes in sheep's milk cheese are very different, and they're easier to digest, and they don't impact people who are lactose intolerant. So if you want to include cheese for the protein, look for sheep's milk cheese. So just being conscious and wise about the choices that you make in the food that you're putting in your body and you're putting in your kids' bodies. We want things that do not have high sugar, do not have high acid, do not have high gluten, because a lot of those things too are going to send them on this sugar high, and then they're up and down, and their moods aren't going to be stabilized. So it can also, impact their ADHD or their hyperactivity. They don't have a diagnosis of ADHD. So beyond that, I would think about too, just snacking. For kids, I feel like so many kids are snackers. So what are some healthy alternatives for snacks? And I'm going to link our blog post below on this particular topic, food in general, but there is a section on snacking. And healthy snack alternatives would be some dried fruits. They can be high in sugar, but they're natural sugars, some of them, most of them, depending on where you get them. And nuts are good. They can be allergens, but seeds are usually good ones. You can do a seed alternative. And of course, like raisins are good, but something that they might actually really like because the crunchy nature of it, which is de-stressing, are dehydrated foods. So dehydrated fruit or dehydrated veg. And you could do some butterless popcorn or buttered popcorn with high quality butter or something called ghee, Ghee. And then you could put some flavorings on top as well. But something else you could even do is something like a rice cake. And it sounds boring and it doesn't have the best texture and the best taste, but if you put things on top of it like seed butter and then some fruit, or you take it and you make a design on it, and there's some examples in the blog post I'll link below, you could make little faces out of it with the fruit or make it more appealing visually so kids are more motivated to eat it. So I think about your whole food presentation and the way you're serving kids food. If they don't like something like leafy greens, can you hide leafy greens somewhere? Like, can you put it in a smoothie and they're much more interested in a smoothie? Or you can put it in a smoothie and make it into pops and they can eat them as popsicles. So try and think about ways to hide the things that they need and should have in a different form or visually presented differently. So just some things to think about and consider. Lots of research around this, lots of research around plant-based healing and including certain plants in your diet and how they help reduce stress and behavior and improve the brain functioning. But I would encourage you to also just if you possibly can, take your child to a nutritionist or someone who works in the field of nutrition or herbs to get levels tested to see where they are low or high, and try and supplement with foods if possible. And then if you can't with just food alone, then supplements, as long as they are natural and healthy for your kiddo. But check with a more Eastern-based doctor for some more natural and holistic ways to eat healthy and function better. All right, so report back. Let me know how it goes.